So this is the Apex EDC Tool Organizer S. S means simple, standard, and most especially, this is meant for the Swiss Army knife type of tools. Measurement of this is roughly about 4 inches or 100 ml, and it has relatively the same dimension on the width. The fantastic thing about this is that it's has this larger than usual double A type of flashlight. This one is particularly the Olight Warrior Nano, and it could slide in like this. It has a secure strap right there, and of course a clip rest here. The Swiss Army knife, you also have something extra like bit holders, or this particularly is my personal key organizer here, and there's even a slot for a mini pen. So the Swiss Army knife example that I have here is a 4-layer type. This is the Tinker Deluxe. Now this can accommodate something like even up to or 6 or 7 layers. You can see that the 4 layers here and then another extra layers would be somewhere there. So it can accommodate like as big as the Victorinox Champ, which has 7 layers. It has a secure snap button. This is the Buckle Guy whole snap made of brass, but it has matte finish. This is the 16 millimeter. And this other one here, the smaller one for the strap for the flashlight, is 12 millimeters or half an inch. Now at the back, there's a slot for a flat tool of any sorts. So here at the back, there is the Ulticlip. So it has some tension here. You can disengage and engage this to secure this onto the rim of your belt or pants or pocket. And I found this very useful rather than the regular type of clips that I've been using in my hardware. This is in white, gray, and black polyester threads here. This is purely vegetable tanned leather. Okay, one is Tempesti, which are the black and the gray here. The white one is an aniline type of vegetable tan, which is 2.8 millimeters thick. I believe this is called the Batero. So overall, this is what it looks like. So this is something very small, and you can pocket this in the front of your jeans pocket, for example. And I like the size rather than the usual things. If regular viewers would see my L or XL versions of this, this is small enough to carry in your pocket. And then if you want to mount it, the Ulticlip is a very good option. And this is hanging out on the side of you, the hip. So in this video, I shall be showing you how exactly I have created this. So if you want to actually follow along or you want to make your own, I can provide you the pattern, but for a few amount in the description, then I could email the PDF patterns that you can print out in either letter size or E4 size paper. Free to follow. If for those who are curious on how I make it, go on and watch the rest of the video. But this is basically it. The Apex EDC Tool Organizer S. S for simple, standard, or Swiss Army knife specific. So let's go and have a look at how I did this. So in this video, I shall be creating something quite different than my usual just show and tell of the finished product of my custom leather organizers, Apex EDC Organizer S. So these are the patterns. Okay, so usually what I used to do before I had a laser cutter was that I printed it out on sheets of A4. So these are the necessary patterns. Okay, this one is laser cut from a 0.4 millimeter plastic sheet, and there are basically four main patterns. This took about 30 minutes on the laser cutter to cut. So I'm going to be cutting this out from a 5 ounce or a 2.2 millimeter thick vegetable tan leather. So I'm choosing currently what is the best side. Okay, so just going to secure this, and then I'm going to cut out this entire piece that I need. So I shall be using this moon shape type of knife to generally cut what I need. So I think I'll just cut through here. It's quite thick. Okay, so this is about 2.8 millimeters thicker than what I'm usually using, which is only 2.2 millimeters. So there's a 0.6 millimeter thickness difference what I usually use. So I'm just gonna cut it here. So I have to be careful with this knife. It looks very intimidating if you don't know what this is exactly, but yeah. I like this because for general cutting. It's moon shape, and I found this to be easier for thicker types of leather. And I could just roll it like this rather than having a cutter. But what I'm doing here is just separating the smaller pieces from the big piece. So let's see. Generally, this is it. So for the black piece, I'm going to be using this nice uh, Tempesti brand. Is another Italian brand, in which case it's semi-gloss in finish. So I'm just going to keep that, keep that in. Just 2 spots. Okay, so it should suffice. I'm trying to maximize everything as much as I can. Of course, you could use a normal knife. That's not necessarily you use this moon shaped type of knife, or the sometimes known as a head knife. So then, so the light gray, it's also from Tempesti. It's a semi-gloss, more of a matte finish than glossy. All right, so we have this piece here. I want to use it because of the texture here. I like this to be, yeah, maximize this. So I found this very convenient, the head knife, using it, and you have to be careful though. And later on, finishing the edges straight, having them straight. the head knife is actually more effective than a cutter, a regular cutter, because I'm going to be like cutting like 4 layers of these, and head knife happens to be very much more effective in cutting straight than a regular type of cutter. So there you go, the gray pieces, and we can worry about these two pieces, smaller pieces later on. I love the fact that I could now use plastics instead of just printing them each time I make the patterns. I mean, so I'm just tracing these things. Okay, so this is a scratch all. So I am what I'm basically doing is transferring the pattern lines edges onto the leather. Now you can't. It's hard to see here in white, but of course when you see it in actual, you could see where these are. And this versus paper or something that is a thicker paper, this one's more accurate. I found it much more using these plastic patterns, which is made from 0.4 millimeter thick type of plastic, and laser cutting them is it's much more yeah, laser cutting just gives me saves me more time than cutting these on paper and then using that same pattern over and over, and after some time the paper edges would not be the same, but this one is in plastic, so much more reliable here. So I have those, and then of course you have to tape secure those, and then so this is what I'm doing here. So I usually start with the outline of the pattern from the outside and secure them with tape. Once I've done all the lines on the outside, it's now time to secure some of them so they don't move when I'm going to be punching the holes. So punching of the holes is the first thing that I need to do when I'm transferring all these patterns onto the leather. Here, let's make use of that. So we have this. Okay, so these are pretty much not moving. So I'm just going to make sure that every line is scribed on. Okay, much clearly. Correctly the correct places. So I've made even smaller points where this will be the transition points of my cutting later on when I'm finishing, so that they're on a straight line. It's the black one. Now for the black part here. So the essential lines need to be where they're supposed to be. So this should fit. Let's just make sure that everything is being scribed onto the leather, making sure everything is pretty much readable later on. I'm going to take this off. Okay, that's the black one. And for the gray part, outer parts are finished for that one. Let's go for these. So the last big part. Okay, for the smaller parts, okay, so the dimensions of this is exactly uh, with one of these cookie cutter patterns that I have. Okay, instead of me creating the small part, so it's exact to this cookie cutter. So this one, if this is the outer pocket, so I've decided this to become white. Okay, and then the other one would be, where does it go? It goes here. But this will be gray instead of white. So I I will need this to use this to cut out the patterns for this part. So here for the gray one and a white one. So I need one here. So I'm gonna get my mallet here, making sure that it's the cutting edge is correctly there. So here, all right, here we go. This one. Sure that it goes through all the way. Just the inside. Okay. And we have this, the gray one. Now for the white one, make use of here. Let's make sure that it's not in the way. Okay. Uh-huh. Let's pop it out. It's quite thick. Anyway, we got the these pieces done. Okay, put away all the sharp things first for safety reasons. This is how I do it. That I tend to put it each phase. I have to put away these sharp objects so that I don't poke myself. I haven't had an accident for the last 2 years, so that's the reason I practice safety, uh, and I don't want to be injured. So, okay, let's start with the smaller one. So, getting back my boards here, the plastic boards. So before I punch the holes, these need to be secured properly so that they don't move. That's good. So the initial thing that I usually do is first punch the holes very lightly. So just to note where the holes are, and then really punch them out later on. So you could see this process here. Let's see. So just lightly indicating where they are, checking that they are aligned properly in the hole, and then you just punch them lightly. First, you need to use different types of punch holes here, the number of punch holes accordingly. Okay, it's going through this tape very lightly. Okay, this one is 5. So I'm using a 4-prong at the moment. It comes with I think on 6, and then this is 4, and then there's a 2. It's usually the set, and I bought like a single piece, one punch hole for individual punching. And then the thing about this is about the punch hole is about 1 millimeter, but what I cut out here is 2 mm, so that you know these the the teeth, or these holes, uh, I guess I could call them teeth, they are not obstructed so much. So here it has, this one is a two two prong. So the prongs here are, I usually do this. Okay, so just kissing. I'm not punching through yet. Just the position of where the holes are for the threads later on. Now for the black one. So I'm using the 6 prong. 6 prong. Okay, overlapping. Now I've been using AutoCAD to lay out all of this, of course, and these are original designs. I did and have been developing them for the last 2 years, and I've been upping my skills, of course, by practicing other patterns, replicating some, and also some buying of patterns from original designers. But what excites me is designing my own stuff. That's what I want. So this one, I'm going to be using my pretty curved alignment of these holes. I'm going to be using this single prong puncher. Let's see. Yep. This is where it's going to be the snaps. Now, I don't want my hardware to be touching the tools inside. So this is the reason why I have these patched snap hardware. This rectangular. That's the main reason why I'm still doing this extra effort so that my tools don't scratch to the hardware, the brass. So you should not miss any holes. Making sure that everything is indicated here. Making sure that this screw hole is indicated properly. This is where the Ulticlip is going to be. Now to do the punch holes. Now for the individual curve. configuration of this area. Okay. This is where, again, there's the layer where I'm going to anchor the Ulticlip 4 millimeters apart. So I'm using a 4 millimeter prong distances here. The last line. Now rechecking the work again. All holes are indicated. And this is what you see, what you get. Okay, so this is the pattern. It's not so obvious there, but here you can see it. It's very faint. Okay, so the camera is not catching the pattern for the strap here. It's something like that. Now, another wonderful thing about using these plastic stencils, pattern stencils here, is that you could do a reverse version by just flipping it and just do the same things, but in a mirrored version. So the next step here is going to be doing the cutting now. So we have all these pieces. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 gray pieces, 1 black, and then so these will be the rectangular patches for the snap buttons, which I will sew there. So let's start with the white one. Yeah, there's a faint line, of course, where I transferred the lines. So, so the first thing that I would do here is first again get the punching layer. So this has been with me for the last 2 years, so it's really used. So we'll punch the holes. So I'll first start with the 5 millimeter on these corners. So I'll punch them out. Okay, so position them properly. And I'm going to use my silicone mallet. We check your positions. Okay, so okay, and then I need to have a larger arc type of punch. So I'm using 5 millimeter diameter holes here for these, and then I'm going to be using this 20 mm diameter for this curved line here on the bottom part. Okay, so these need to be perfect. I was check where they are before I punch. Punch through. Save that for later. Guess that's it. I'll do the rest. I think while just they're punching all these corners. So making sure that everything's perfect before punching. Perfectly aligned. Great. And lastly, here in this part, the bottom. I'm using a 45 millimeter. I guess this has a larger diameter radius. Using a 45. punch the hole. Okay, here we go. Okay, perfect. For the other side, okay, make sure that it's aligned properly. So it has to be perfect because I don't want to waste this material. Okay. Perfect. Perfectly aligned. So when I'm cutting these, they won't be in this very sharp edge. It might tear out over time. So I always like to put in a bit of a radius, a curved radius here on these corners so that they will last longer. And then I need another, yeah, I need a rectangular punch hole here for this one. So this is not exactly the same. Here it's too large. So I have to do it in phases. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, align it properly. When you're working, make sure that you have a good lighting to see things. Okay, so right now I'm using a circular lighting by Elgato. So instead of using it for a camera that faces me and the light faces me, I'm using it as in horizontal configuration, held up by an arm that usually is for microphones. It's okay. I think this is perfect. Yep, it's true. Now for the second phase, a slightly, oh no, it's slightly uh, misaligned. Next phase, make sure that your fingers are not going to be hammered the edges. So I'm just gonna, that's it. Yep, corner, that very corner. Perfect. Now it's time to cut. You're punching the necessary holes, or it's time to cut the pattern on the outer part before punching the final holes. So the way to do it is I usually use surgical knives. So this one is already blunt, and I needed to change the blade of this one particular surgical knife, and so I'm have the number 25 thing. So I'm gonna be using this pliers to remove it safely, and then remove the new one. Okay, and use the pliers again to mount it, okay, correctly. Okay, so it's slots in like that. Found these to be easier and really much more accurate, and then of course use the spent uh, packaging for the old blade to throw it away. And what I usually do is I safely tape this for safety reasons. I mean, if somebody discovers this, but I don't want anyone being injured for rummaging the trash bin, for example. So I usually would dispose this safely like this. All right. Now for the straight edge cutting, I'm going to use aluminum edge rulers. Usually these are the things that I use and for smaller areas, but I usually would be using are these types of rulers for really long pieces. Okay, so these are for the smaller parts. Here we are. So let's start cutting areas. Okay, so carefully cut it. Knowing that where to start and where to end. And once you're okay, it's time to cut. This ruler is a bit more fancier. Okay, it has a shield for your fingers so that if your cutter derails, it doesn't hit you as a safety factor there. Then here, making sure it's perfectly perpendicular. Yes. And I like it, in cutting. So this is the reason why I'm using these surgical knives is because they're quite precise and sharp. So I like to cut my leather like just once, one go, and then a higher quality edge, straight, precise, clean. This part, I'm just going to use this edge, align them properly, making sure everything's aligned and straight, then cut once. Here, best practice is you cut from the inside of the pattern, and so that the accidental cutting onto into the leather is avoided. Here, I'm just going to stop and make sure that I'm just going to cut it precisely. Okay. Where to start, where to end. Let your coordination and cuts. Yes. Then here, cut accordingly. Do it slowly and carefully. Okay, done with the general cutting of this black part. Let's go for the gray. Now there's a curved area part here, in which case I think I need to use the punch hole. Yep. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm overlapping the corners. I mean, I'm cutting. I overshoot my cuts so that they are perfectly cut from the excess. Get here. Okay. I'm precisely cutting where the scribed surfaces are, edges are. So it's perfect. Then when you get to this endpoint, I'm doing it slowly, carefully, so that I don't cut the front part. Cut this piece out. Yep. Perfect. Yep. Okay. This part. One more part there. Let's cut out some excess parts. Need to be cut out. There you go. Of course, sometimes I don't. There are times that I would miss some of the lines slightly, but basically through practice, that is reduced. Those mistakes are reduced, and you get better at it as you do more of these. Of course, there's a certain quality that I'm after when I'm doing all these crafts, and again, these are some things that are the things that I actually use, and I want it to be good. I am my own customer as well, so I would have I would self-critique my work after and rethink about certain things and aspects of some parts where I can improve on and probably better the quality of craftsmanship if I'm not happy in some parts. But yeah, but usually I won't. I would stop the project if, especially for one piece, and I have to redo that piece again because of some major mistake. But it doesn't really happen often. I think only once I had to redo an entire part because overcut, yeah, overcut, and then it went to the large area of the piece, so I had to redo the entire thing again. Okay, well, has to be perfectly in place, and then let's get our mallet again. Okay, perfect. And then the hole for the snap, it's 6 millimeters. So indicate where it's supposed to be perfectly centered. Okay, I've already indicated where the center of this is exactly. So I'm being careful that this is exactly centered, the hole, or else it's going to misalign the snap button later on. So being careful. Okay, let's recheck. Yes, visually it's correct where things are. So now we punch. Perfect, perfect. So basically, the general cutting and uh, 5 millimeter diameter holes are done. Now it's time to do the general punching of the 1 millimeter holes, 4 millimeter apart holes. So I'll start with the white. Okay, punch through. Just checking if everything is correctly punched out and complete. This is 2.8 millimeters in thickness. It's a lot. Well, it's a bit thicker than my 2.2 and I'm usually using. And I don't have a skiving machine, so therefore I'm going to use that 2.8 millimeters of thickness as is, and it's an advantage also because it's basically nice and supple and really the temper of this is like considered medium according to the documents. Uh, yeah, it's pretty much a very nice, nicely nicely evenly tempered type of leather, and yeah, it's like not too soft and not too stiff at the same time. So it's medium. I have handled stiffer leather and softer leather, and I don't want to go either which. So a medium tempered leather like this tempest. Sorry, this is the Botero. It's much more welcome. So certain leather temper is ideal for certain crafts. For example, bags have a softer leather temper. You don't want to be making bags with this stiffness of leather. So, and then at the same time, like for example, gloves need to have the softest types of leather. I mean, so that it fits the any person's hand and it's manageable. You can use it properly. I think I've done like more than a dozen of these already. So the measurements and the design pattern is right and tested. I'm guessing. No, well, of course, if I there's something that irks me, I would correct it accordingly. And so far, done like half a dozen of these at this size, and the pattern has already worked. And And then, of course, I've been using the previous crafts I made for like weeks in actual. So this white part is already done, like nicely punched out, and they're properly done. Let's go over the black one. As much as possible, everything has to be nicely done, correctly done. It's for the Ulticlip. Okay, so you can see the design. So many punches, so many lines. Now, normally, if you could see organizers, their designs are very simple, much more simpler than what I'm doing here. And they have less stitches, less stitch lines like this. But when I was designing this, I didn't care for that. The simplicity of having it uh, simple construction. Nope. What I was after is the performance of this and the look as well. I know this is hard to do, mass produce this. That was not my intention at all, but rather that I wanted this look good, function good. Uh, those were the main goals, not something simple to do. So one more. If I were to do that, it would be just this ordinary looking pocket organizer, a tool organizer, like any. I mean, I could just copy from basically other manufacturers and just replicate whatever they're doing. But that's not fun. So at the same time, so this is my original design, and I've been developing it over and over, rethinking some parts, what parts I can improve on, and that excites me. Then mass producing something, some generic pocket organizers, and it's not the main point here. So I'm inventing. That's what I want to do with these organizer designs. And every morning, almost every morning, I do sit down and think about these designs for wallets, for pocket organizers, notebook organizers. I have like rims of sketches of ideas that goes on for months, and I haven't executed most of these things, the ideas. So I'm slowly making these designs into reality by making prototypes and to see if what I can improve on. Okay, this one needs to be cut an angle, small part there. Another thing that I do is these are all manually stitched, so there's no sewing machine. Saddle stitching is much more secured, and rather than the machine stitched. So I'm still going on this route and not mass producing again. And I want my stitches to be the best or the most secured rather than something that is machine stitch and faster to do. I want to check the thickness of this. Okay, so the current thickness of this original, what I punched out, is 3 millimeters. So that's really thick. This is about 1.4 millimeters. The my thickness gauge here. So the gray one is 2.2, 2.3 millimeters. That's fine. I'm gonna use that, but this one is too thick at 3 millimeters. Yes, I think this is yes, this is close to 2 millimeters. This is 1.85. I'm gonna be using that instead of this thicker one. So we need to punch these things up. So I have to mark where the holes are. So I'm just going to indent. I need to hammer just to indicate where the holes are. Same thing here for the gray. Make sure that everything's aligned properly. Punch through properly. Primary. Okay, done. Perfect. So all my pieces which are cut and punch. Now to clean up a bit. So after doing the cutouts and the punching, it's time to bevel the edges. Okay, beveling just makes the corners a bit more rounder. Doing this as diligently as carefully as possible. Okay. Okay. I think, yeah, I need to stand that out properly. Need to sand that later. Use this instead. Okay, so I'm going back and using this pattern. So the corner is still 90 degrees and not chamfered. So I needed to chamfer it. So therefore, I'm going to use this template. I'm going to use my blade cutter, surgical knife. Make sure that this is smooth. I mean, it's aligned, and so that this is going to be nice, rounded. The other way around. This is much more stiffer than the white. It's easier for me to bevel the edges. So like the black one, this is also Tempesti leather, the brand from Italy. I like the temper of these. Unfortunately, they don't come in whites, only the light gray, which is this. So it's aniline finish for the white one. This one is natural leather. And so what dye this is are the lastly the strap here. Okay. Although it's still a bit rough, so this needs to be processed, like sanded on the other side. Okay, not so ideal. So I'm just gonna sand that those edges, take out some of the burrs of the edges, smoothen them. When you're sanding these out, just feel it if it's smooth, that if it's smoother than before, and that's it. That's mainly the main point here. That these edges need to be smoothened out, not rough. Okay, eliminate the roughness. Okay, next one, the black one. Especially those corners. So AutoCAD is something I've been doing, of course, for me being in architecture. AutoCAD is the, a normal thing for me to use as a tool. That's not to say that you can do it manually, because when I first started, I did everything manually drafted. And then eventually I said, maybe I could use CAD. In which case, yeah. And now I have a laser cutter, more so, with a laser cutter, and so it's easier for me to cut the patterns in plastic first, plastic stencils, and for me to produce. It used to be right, I just print them out in regular paper, and then eventually I started using thicker stock of paper. But now I'm using the plastic stencil edges to create all these patterns. Now, for the white one, okay, I don't like this flesh color so much. I'm not so happy with this. There's the white side. Yes, I like it. I'm crazy about that. But this flesh, natural hue of this leather, smoothing things out. And it's exposed. I guess it is thick. Okay, the thickness is ideal here for the strap later on. And I'm going to strap secure my tool, and the edge here needs to be smooth. Of course, the patches here for the snaps are going to be here. That's going to be white. This is where the gray is going to be for the snaps. So, yep, I think I'll have this painted white. So now I'm going to be coloring the back with this. This is the flat white Angelus acrylic for leather. Although this part is not going to be seen so much, but I'm going to still paint it anyway. So the theme of this design is going to be black and white only. The hardware is going to be this painted black from Buckle Guy. Evenly distribute the paint. Just do white. Apply white. Let's color that in. The edge. Okay, that's it. I'm not gonna touch this anymore. I'm just gonna let it dry for like an hour. I'm gonna be burnishing these already, these other parts. Okay, so it's going to be, I'm gonna be using Tokinol as my burnishing agent. I'm gonna be using, I guess, a slicker. Smooth in the edges, and then, of course, another. I'm gonna be using a rag. It's my burnishing rag I've been using for the longest time. And start burnishing. So I bought a big bottle, and of course I placed in this dispenser. And you could see I'm just placing in little tiny bits of dots of this burnishing agent. Okay, all the way there. First, I'll distribute it with my finger. Just to even it out. Apply it to the finish edges. Smoothing the edges by using this slicker stick. Have a more rounded edge. Overall, I'm trying to smoothen the edge, and the agent is going to seal these edges. Okay, on the back side. That's that. Smoother. It's more roundish in these at these edges, and that's good. Now for this inside. Okay, making sure everything is evenly smoothed out. Okay. Thinks okay. That's finished. Now for the front pockets. Okay, so what makes a difference for by applying Tokinol or this burnishing agent? Well, if you could see, the um you see here, this is the untreated, and this is the treated. So it's a if you burnish this is a bit more rounder and it's sealed. Now you could use water or wax, but beeswax for sealing these edges and smoothening them out. But this is convenience of Tokinol is all that. Although I have beeswax, and of course water does can also have the similar results, no? But yeah, this is smoothing out the edges like that, as opposed to something like this. So some of the burrs are still there, and burnishing eliminates those burrs. It just seals them and just sort of like glues them on to the leather. It just disappears. So again, finishes the edges. They're not rough. They're more rounded more. Sort of like there's even darkens even the edges here. Just shields it, shields it, just seals it, and then it's a shinier finish. Let's do this here. Okay, so I'll just finish this up. So I've grinded this screw set, which is a Chicago screw set for this. Instead of having a 5 millimeters stem length, I wanted it to be less than 3 millimeters. So I had to grind it by just sanding the endpoints of these sets. Okay, so this is the Ulticlip that I want to use. It's gonna be here, and the screw set, which is from Buckle Guy. This is a 11 millimeter screw set. Needs to be here. So in terms of putting it on, it's something like this. Let's place this in. Should fit in, yes, exact. So the screw bit here, where you put in your screwdriver, is on the outside. Before I was like the other way around, but in some for some considerations of maintenance, I wanted this to be on the outside, so you can unscrew to replace the Ulticlip if it wears out or is damaged. So we could unscrew this, just replace it with a new hardware. But this is what we have. So now we currently have all the parts. The other parts being the edges being burnished. And it's belled first and then burnished, and all the parts are here. So the hardware we're gonna be using is the Ulticlip. So a grommet hole. We have the two types of hole buttons, or hollow buttons, or snaps, hollow snaps. We have the screw for the Ulticlip. This is the smaller snap, hole snap, and this is the bigger hole snap for the white here, and the smaller one will go onto the smaller strap for the flashlights. So we have the pieces here, and before I can assemble everything together, and before I start stitching all these things together, I first would like to put the hot stamps for these. So mainly the main logo here, and for the flashlight strap, smaller logo for the letter with the lettering. So this is going to be under the smaller snap button later on. So let's do that first. And probably, yes, would like to put in some text here for my recording or some sort of text to note what model number this is and what date I manufactured this. So firstly, I'm going to be placing in my big logo here to the back side. In order for this to be really straight, using this this thing, a square, so everything is perfectly aligned and correct. So it's really perpendicular to these sets of holes here. Everything, so the logo is straight, and I'm sure that's correct, and put in some pressure. Making sure everything is even. And one more. So I'm using a press machine, and this is just part of a cylindrical tool I'm using, and that's the logo stamp onto the back. So what I need to do is to center this properly, and then of course press. It's everything I'm sure. Evenly suppress everything. And that's it. Perfect. Now for the front snap button. It's going to be located here. Slightly higher. So I'm using the press to press in the snap button. Just to be sure. Yep. And that's just perfect. Yes. It's in exactly. Now for the press down. This is the 16mm. So I'll be using this 16mm punch. Then press down. Okay, rotate it a bit. Just to make sure that this is pressed down evenly. So it seems, yeah, this is the patch sort of button. That's for the front. Now for the back. So I have to change the tool exactly in the hole that is needed, so I don't have to make it bigger. This is smaller hardware. This needs to be raised up a bit. So I must put that layer and then press down. rotate to evenly make sure that this is evenly pressed down. Yes. Perfectly aligned. Perfectly done. Now for the snap button on for the strap of for the flashlight here. First, what I need to do is to make sure that this thing is properly the hardware will be properly be centered onto the logo. All right. So in order for me to do that is first I need to align this part of the hardware, which is the circular outer part for the hollow snap, and make sure that this is really centered. And then I'm going to mark up this to create a circle around it by using the scratch all to scribe in the circular thing, putting dots onto the circle so I know where the center of this is going to be. Once I'm sure, I'm gonna place in the hole. Okay, align it to the tool, making sure that it's going to be centered when I press it down. All right, seems right. And everything's aligned. So therefore, I'm going to be placing in the pressure. Press down, rotate it, press down again so that it's evenly pressed onto the leather. Yep. Happy with that. That's correctly done. So the grommet hole is 8 millimeters here. So I need to hammer this in. So I need this base. Keep this thing steady and to reduce the noise. And just need to have the very specific punch tool for this one. I'm just going to hammer this in. Let's make sure that everything is. Now I'm just setting the text. Then where it's printing. So I'm making sure that the text is where they're supposed to be. Aligning, making sure that everything is straight and centered. So that's starting to carve out. Okay, the laser is etching per line, micromillimeter at a time. It's burning the surface. Of course, this is not necessary for those of you who are making your own, but it's something that I actually just place in as part of my production so that I have a sort of documentation on when I made this or what date I produced it and what version. But then let's have a look later on when it's all done. This will take about some over 10 minutes or so. So this is the Apex EDC Tool Organizer S version 1.0, designed by me, October 2025. So all the pieces are here. Going to place in first the Ulticlip before we start stitching. I'll be placing the Chicago screw. Just gonna make sure that this is correctly installed. Widen the hole a bit larger, just so that this is secured. The bottom part, the other side. Okay, so it's fine. Let's put it in. Goes in like that. Screw that in. So the screw part is on the outside. Make sure that is correctly installed. It's not going anywhere. So I'm gonna be saddle stitching. The main parts are sewn. I'm gonna first do this tiny part here. It's the easiest. It's the first phase. So I've decided to use this flat 0.8 millimeter polyester threads as my to thread everything. So this is going to nicely contrast with the blacks and the light gray. So that wise, I'm just gonna, what do we do here? I'm gonna thread this, threading the point. So these are blunt needles I'm using. I'm gonna go through first these things. I'm gonna move up to its needle hole right there. So I went through something like a zigzaggy loop through the thread, and then the end point goes in like so. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to push the thread here and pull it through so that it's nice and smooth. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. So I'm going to do the same thing again. So again, put a bit of length. The pointy thing is I'm going to zigzaggy punch through the thread. Twice, 3 times. Push that bit to the end where the hole is. And then thread through. Push that in. And then pull. Now I have this. So here, I'm going to thread the flashlight strap first. We see this. So I align it. Now I'm going to use a clip set here. so that this becomes like a third hand. Then I'm going to I'm going to thread this twice. Okay, so I'm going to go and align everything first. Goes through there, right? Right to that hole. Okay, I have a longer thread length here, so that's fine. This should be enough for my estimates. And then that, okay, it's gonna go here first. So I'm gonna, yeah, any direction could do. So saddle stitching is like going through the hole twice, and the the threads are going to be zigzagging through the material. So this is a lot stronger than machine stitching. I'm going to do that, tighten that a bit. So I'm doing this by freehand, and you can see that, well, this is much more versatile for me for the reason there are odd, not so ordinary uh, uh, corners. So not exactly normal configuration or form or patterns that I'm using here. So the thread is off-white. So I'm going through the zigzagging motion here. Goes there. Put off the thread to one side. And then it goes the other side here. It goes through the same hole. Pull through. And then continue on the same motion. So I'm pulling that. So I'm keeping this out of the way. And then push through. Same motion again. Put the thread out of the way. So the pre-punching is quite convenient here. So you could see the alignment. Everything's straighter. And goes like this. And like that. Same thing here. So I'm going to do this twice because I want to reinforce this as much stronger. So for longer lasting, just to reinforce this because I don't want to go and restitch this in the future. So therefore, double reinforcement is a welcome thing. So that's the first line. Then continue the same direction until I reach that end again. Then the last thread this hole. Okay, that should do the thread, and then tighten that. So here, I cut this off, but I'm going to put a little there. Now I'm going to burn this off. Okay, normally you can use lighter, and but I'm going to use a thread zapper. It's an electric melts the thread then and burns it actually. So it creates an intense heat. See some smoke there. Just push it in to seal the end of the thread. Push that to that hole. So checking if everything is flushed. Just to make sure, I'm just gonna heat part of it and then just push. Okay, that should be enough. Okay, that's secured. Pretty much secured, yes. So the sequence of the threading is first the strap for the flashlight. Now we're going to connect this outer black part onto the white. Make sure everything's aligned. So there's going to be an overlap there. So everything's should be aligned like this. Let's secure it with some clips. So it's the alignment. So it doesn't move so much. Take another clip. And that's secured. This part. Okay, it's not. Okay, here. So I'm going to need more thread than what it is. So I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, that should be enough. Actually, so I'm gonna take out this. I'm going to just thread through first. Okay, put the nail through the thread. 1, 2. Must be in the center. 3. Push that away to the end. And then through the needle hole. Pull through. Then just pull. That secures it. Now for some threading. So I'm gonna backstitch. Okay, so backstitching means I'm gonna on the outer on the first part here at this end, I want to thread it twice. So I'm going to do this. Goes up first. I'm gonna do this one direction, same sequence, so that stitch direction remains the same. Bit of pressure. Tighten that. It goes through there. Same direction when pulling the thread out of the way. Tighten it a bit. And goes back. So now I'm threading the first top part twice. Same direction. Goes through. Goes there. Tighten. Goes back in. Goes through. Same direction. That side. Now that's the back stitch. Now I'm going to go the regular way. That direction. The other one. Okay, so again, same sequence. Goes through. Goes back in. Thread out of the way. Same direction. Goes through. Goes back in again. So once you're really doing this a lot of times, this becomes normal. And you have to be careful though for your safety. Your fingers out of the way when you're threading. Goes through. One wonderful thing about doing this in AutoCAD and not punching the holes later on, pre-punching them, is that the holes are exact where they're supposed to be. So there's no problems of misalignment or crookedness. And yeah, basically it's everything's aligned and straight perpendicularly. And then, okay, so this is problem. Just find the hole. There you go. Just tighten everything. Just checking if this is really aligned. Okay, so okay, that's all good. Same direction. Smack it in. Press there. Finally, the last few holes. Smack in. Right. So there's an extra hole on the other part. So I just want to go in through there. This just makes it more secure. Go back there and goes back here. Back there. I'm gonna go back into the other side. So this is back stitching. So back stitch is done. Cut off this extra thread and now burn the ends off again. It's hard to see it, but here are those thread ends. And just melt the ends. Ouch. Okay. So that's what it looks like. So the theme is Stormtrooper like, and this should be interesting. So now I'm going to the third. So the third phase of this is with this. But before I stitch this, I forgot to actually stitch in these small patches onto the leather. I shall do that. So this is the most complicated part for this stitching of the front pocket, where whereby underneath, which is this black, has already been stitched onto the white. Now I'm stitching this gray front pocket. Now it's gonna crisscross between these two layers. Okay, so these three layers, the gray, the black, and the white, have one common hole. So I'm inching towards that center. So here I am stitching this angle of the sewing line. And then now I'm about to cross to that center or that common hole. Just one more. Okay. So the other one is through here. So that's this side, which is the left. Now I'm going to thread my needle through two holes, the first two holes, and then I am going to go out on the back of the black side. Or yep. So that's what I'm gonna do. So it's a bit tricky. Okay, so I'm gonna do this very, very slowly. So I'm gonna go to this hole, which is that common hole, which is in all these three layers. But I'm going to go only for the first two layers. And then I'm gonna flip here between the white and that black leather pieces. And I'm gonna go through. And this is what I'm hoping is that I'm gonna go on the other side between these two, the black and the white. That's what I'm doing here. So it goes through, not all the way through, even through the white piece, but only these two first layers, which are the gray and the black. So now, what about the other one? So now here, this needs to go through the black and the gray hole. Okay, for me to do that, okay, so I'm just going to needle pinpoint that hole, and it needs to go through. Okay, if you're having a difficult time, what I usually do, if in order for this to be successful, is that I'm going to go through the black one first. There you go. That's the hole, the common hole for all these three layers of of leather. I'm going to use my pliers to push to pull the needle because it's tough. So I pull the thread, and now I just go through the gray one, so which is here. Okay. So what now is this needs, since this is the first sequence, this one needs to go to the first, I mean the two layers, gray and the black. Now this back thread is going to go through that same hole to continue on to the other side. So basically you're threading through two layers, the first two layers, but the difficult part is crossing that common hole part. So it's transitioning just outside this white leather sheath. And I'm just going to finish this. Just going through two more stitch holes. Put some tightening there. And then the last hole. Now I need to backstitch to reinforce this. Okay, it's going there. I'm going to go one backstitch. Need to reinforce that. One last thing. We need to do that. Go through there. Once. And then the last one. Going through there. Tighten everything. And then cut. Now here is a great advantage of using the red zapper. This, by the way, is the not the battery version, rather the wired version. I plug in to a power source. Needs to the battery operated one has to have two AA batteries, but this one is wired to a transformer. Okay, the voltage of this is probably about 3 volts, and you go there. So this is the advantage of having a thread zapper, is that if you use a lighter, the flames might damage the surface. So, and that's the outcome of this one pocket in the first stitch here in the front. Now I'm going to proceed on to this next. So I'm going to backstitch the first 3 lines of stitching, or 2 lines, first 2 lines, first 3 holes, the first 2 lines. I'm going to measure this so that I have enough for that length. So backstitching is important to reinforce the first this rim hole here, so that the polyester thread will last for for longer time. Don't have a problem, so put some tension there. And then cut. And let's melt the thread ends. Now for this line, to sandwich the gray and the black. I have enough. 1, 2, 3, 4. So usually I have a minimum of 5 lengths, and this one is like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Very exact. The first one I'm going to stitch is this lower part of this front pocket. So in for me to position this a bit better, or I think I'd best stitch the vertical stitch line first, and then it'll be easier for me to stitch that lower part. I want a back stitch, so I'll just count the length of thread that I need, and I think that's okay now. Now to melt the threads. Okay, this is a bit more difficult because it's difficult to align the holes. So this is what I'm gonna do. Go through to loosely just stitch these lines, and like a shoelace. Just put your needle through all the holes first, and then first line, and then pull both ends tightly. Okay. And then let's do the same thing as there. So this is the pen slot. In which case, I added this feature so that the pen won't go through and lose your pen. Tighten everything. Yeah, just ready the thread zapper here. And just burn the end. That should do it. So I'm starting to thread the backside. So this is what I'm intending to do is to start from here, rope around here, and then stop here. So that would be just one line of thread, one long stitching session. This part is where that one hole goes through 4 layers to be more correct. Uh, Not 3, as I earlier said. So this one needs to be reinforced very much more. So here, I'm just going to loop and repeat. Okay, I'm going to backstitch, reinforces the stitching a bit more. Okay, tighten that. One more time. I guess that's, I've looped it many times. I can no longer push this through. Let me see. Just one more. Just one more. Okay, no longer. So I'll have to settle with this. I'm gonna cut off the thread. So now I'm down to the last 2 lines of stitching. So before doing those lines of threads, I need to glue them. Before gluing, I have to make some texturing here on the surface. Texturing the surface means I need to scratch or sand so that the glue has traction. I've already indicated until when or where these scratching need to be. Basically, I'm taking off the paint, the white paint, some parts, so the glue will have some better traction. So I'm removing material here, only here. Yes, this is going to be open, and this is not going to be a glued part here and the front bottom edge. The glue is only on this vertical side. So I'm being careful. So I'm gonna glue the back parts first. I have this dispenser for the glue. I'm using a water-based type of glue. So I normally like to glue even behind the stitch holes and avoiding putting glue onto the stitch holes. In between the holes, but totally avoiding the holes themselves. Okay. So this is the first stage of gluing, and I need to wait for the glue to dry. Okay, I'm just gonna take, I think one hole has been covered. So I'm gonna take a thick needle, push that through that hole. Just take off some of the glue. Just being careful. Yep. Touch the glued area here. I'm gonna retouch that. Yes. Down. That's it. Get the applicator. Spread that glue evenly on the surface, on the edge. Just be careful not applying any glue on clean areas here. Making sure that's evenly distributed. But that's it. I'll just leave this to dry a bit and then come back later. Now I'm just aligning. So it's uh, the glue is dry enough for me to have these two surfaces together. I want these two things to be aligned, all the holes to be aligned. So I'm using a needle to go through the corresponding holes. Is pretty much aligned. Now to glue this part, right? So this middle part. And sure, I could glue the last parts here. Again, same thing. I'll glue around the holes, stitch holes. Just making sure that everything is glued properly, even the in-betweens. And then we wait again for this to dry completely before the last set of gluing. So now this is the glued result of the middle. So this is an hour's worth of drying time. So I'm pressing them to be evenly pressed. And I'm going to check if the holes are aligned properly. So I'm going to be using this pattern needle. This is 1 millimeter. So I'm going to push through these holes just to check if everything's aligned. I mean, the last thing that you don't want to do is really not to check these holes before it's all set. Okay, so yep, I think these are aligned properly. I'm gonna check all of them though. Be thoroughly just pushing the needle through and seeing that these things go through. All these holes are clear, aligned. Now this is the last two sets of threading. So one here on the bottom part, the other one is on the vertical side here. So the first one is these 3 layers. We're going to thread them together. And then this black piece here is just floating and it's open here. And so the last stitching is going to be for all these 4 layers here. You could see, yep, the two last. So there is one part here that you're going to be gluing, which is this. So that's the last thing that you do before doing the last stitching here for the vertical. So here, let's do the stitching of this bottom part. And of course, you need to check if the holes are aligned. Usually what I do here is I'm going to check and see through the holes, and I can see through behind it, of course. Okay. You can't see it properly in the camera. So here, I'm just poking through, making sure everything's aligned. Being careful not to poke myself in the process. So here, yes. Okay. Everything seems to be in order. If I don't do this, eventually I'll probably find myself, having a hard time stitching through. So I want all the holes to be correctly aligned. And it's now time to stitch all of these. It seems to be in order. So now to do the thread. Now usually, okay, so the thread count, it really depends on how thick it is, but what I do here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 lengths is more than good enough, but I like to put in like 1 and 2 extra ones, so 7 all in all. And that accounts for also the length of the needle, and so that, yeah, you don't want to be short of thread. I mean, that's the thread length. I'd rather be longer than shorter. I'm gonna start with this last hole, which we reinforced for stitching the all 4. So I'm gonna push the needle through. This is the most difficult part here. So again, let's go through this way. So it's already, the hole is already very tight with many threads in. So I have to really push this needle. Now I have to make use of some pliers. Okay. And then just pull the needle through carefully so that you don't break the needle hole there. That part is the most weakest point of the needle, so I broke many needles by that way. And so now I could start threading, saddle stitching, and I go this way. Okay, so there's no need for back stitching on this part. So I'm just going to continue the saddle stitching this way. Okay, put some tension and just continue your saddle stitch. This is why I want to do. I don't mount this onto a stitching pony because of the difficulty of this. So it's like this hole is very tight. So it's that way, and then it has to be at a certain angle, and then yeah, there's it. So I'm doing this very slowly. This is the slowest part of saddle, the slowest saddle stitching sequences that normally that I would encounter stitching this. Again, as you go farther away from this corner, the stitching becomes easier because this is going to be out of the way. The black part here. Maybe. Okay. So it was very important for me to have the stitch holes to be so aligned in the first place. Okay, so it's that way. So this needle is going through 3 layers. Now later, I would need to glue this area. That's the last part to glue. Here I can now, close this by back stitching. So this goes back some 5 millimeters left, and then I have to zap. Now I have to zap the ends or burn them. Right? So burn them. Now I'm being careful not to burn the leather. It's gonna scar. So I'm just burning the threads as much as possible. I just push them, melt them. When I'm gluing, I usually have a tissue paper just in case to have some things to wipe out. It's there. Now for the last part, okay, so it's there. I already marked and scarred the area where I'm going to be gluing. So let's glue this. So again, the same thing. Avoid the stitch holes, right? It's hard to see it because it's white, but you've seen this process being done on the other parts. Yep. Just avoid stitch holes. Just the right amount of glue. And then, of course, spread the glue. Okay. It's against white, so it's pretty hard to see the white glue itself, but yeah, spread it. See that? This is what I mean. I've over put glue over some of the holes here, one particular, and I have to quickly adjust that by pushing a needle through the clogged hole with glue. Okay, so before it dries. Okay, remove some glue there. And of course, the other side is also needed to be glued. On the black side, same sequence, same area. I'm gonna glue like this right there. And on the other side of the stitch holes, and I will avoid the stitch holes, right? Not too little, not too much at the same time. Just avoiding and just applying the glue around the stitch holes. Then you need to dry this out. And then piece the two surfaces together after the glue is tacky or gummy, like dried honey or dried syrup. Okay, so spread the glue evenly. At this point, you are carefully doing this as carefully as possible. When you're doing craft, you got to be careful, paying attention how clean everything is going to be and how even or how correctly everything is applied on. And usually, it requires a real attention to the details in what it is that you want to achieve. So it's a high level of quality that you want to achieve in doing this craft. This if you're doing this particular holder, and I wanted to look good, so I could really use it, and it'll look good, and when it looks good and nicely crafted, you want to actually use it more. Okay, there. So therefore, this is another 30 minutes or so of drying before you do the last stitching. And yep, I'll pause this recording and we'll get back at this again. So it's been more than 30 minutes. So it's time to put these two surfaces together. All right. Everything needs to be aligned. So doing this by eye, and yes, you can see through the holes. Just looking through the holes, I can I'm certain that there will be a line, so just gonna put place in a needle through one of them, and then I'm going to press them together, sandwich them, put a bit of pressure. Making sure. Okay, I'm going to get another thick needle here. Just going to push through one more hole so that everything's aligned while I'm pressing down glued edges. I'm going to start from here. No need for back stitching this part. Everything. I'm going to take off this big needle. This part, I think I need to backstitch because I want to reinforce this opening. Yes. Once I'm going to go back again. Okay. And the last part here. Pull for some tension. Then cut some 5 millimeters. Now I'm melting the thread ends as much as I can, but not burning the leather. That seems to be as clean as I can possibly do. You can see it here. So that's okay. So I finished the saddle stitching for this piece. Now, what's next is to cut this. But usually, what I do for a correct way of doing it, since the glue is still fresh, I'm gonna press down these glued edges with some pressure, and then I'll wait for an overnight. So I found that waiting overnight while the glue is setting um, makes it more, shall I say, a bit more stable and much more cured before I do the cutting uh, later on. So currently the edge here, the edges are not perfectly aligned. So even though if that's the reason why I put some points there. These markers, I'll scratch one long line as a guideline for my cutting later on with the head knife or that half moon knife. So if you could see, if you notice, I have some points there in my stencil, in which case that indicates where I can draw out the straight lines for my guidelines for cutting later on. Okay. So usually what I do is I just etch those lines onto the front part, and those dots at the back will tell me if I'm aligned at the rear side of things. So it is morning time. This is 6 hours later, and overnight, so the glue was drying or curing. I placed in some tools. What you actually would be placing in to this organizer. So I have these two Victorinox tools, 4-layer Tinker Deluxe here for the main compartment. Then we have a compact, which is a 2-layer tool over here. So what does this do? I even place in a this pen, the Pico pen, and thing is the edge here are not matching perfectly. So, for example, the black surface here is protruding out a bit more, and everything all the other 3 layers seem to be okay. So that's one thing that I wanted to do last night, is because this is the reason why I placed in these tools while it was setting. So I'm going to be pressing it a bit more just to secure everything, so that the glue, this position before cutting is very much the natural. Okay, so the position of it shifted a bit down here because I placed in the tools. So that makes something, an effect. Oops. An effect to where just before when I'm cutting this, so everything is aligned, or the positioning of the edges are in there where they are supposed to be when you have tools inside. So I mean, like, versus if I have this like flat, if I didn't put in the tools last night, this would be these layers would be in a different position, so they're not really shifted. And so if I cut them straight and then later on I place in the tools, they will shift accordingly. So they won't be a straight perpendicular line that I want. So that was the reason. So now what I'm going to do is to cut the edge with a head knife, right? Really, really straight. But you can see I have some dots here, some points that I previously um, placed in. Okay, so like 3 dots, 1, 2, 3. That's 1.5. No, I'm sorry, not 1.5, but 5 millimeters away from the edge and all throughout there. So those are guiding dots where I want to cut. But before this, I would need to draw some line so that I know where to cut. Right? Not just those points, but rather, so I'm using this pr- this protractor, or this indicator. So I'm adjusting to the edge. Seems right. And then there's another point there on the white. Yes, seems okay. So I just need to indicate it all throughout. So I'm going to scratch or scribe in that line. That is exactly so. mm. So the divider, this is the divider. And I'm just putting in, drawing in, or scribing in lines where I'm supposed to, where the blade is going to travel. Okay. There you go. This one is a bit tricky, so I have to flatten it a bit. Okay, big taller there. Yes, seems okay now. So I have these sets of lines. Now I can actually cut. So I'll just add this, extend this line all throughout, so I know where to start. Now it's time to use the head knife. So I'm laying the organizer flat as I can, and then the head knife needs to be very much perpendicular. So I start at this edge. I'm just going to roll. Now I'm touching the leather edge and I'm making sure that everything is perfect. It's raised. My fingers are out of the way. Now I'm just going to roll slowly. Then move forward. And then roll very much slowly. Right? So far, so good. Now move again forward. And I'm really looking at the line, making sure my blade is perpendicular. Right? Okay, and then move this a bit down. Move the blade's position and roll slowly. Okay, so far so good. And reposition the blade again. Roll forward slowly. Making sure that everything is done properly. Now, position again. Roll slowly towards, forward. Now, shift this a bit forward to me. Roll forward. There we go. The last part. Making sure that I'm hitting the lines. That's it. It's a clean cut. It's the straightness that I wanted. I'm going to check now the rear. Yes. Somehow there's a bit there, but yeah, otherwise this is a happy cut. So you can see it's really straight. Okay. And of course, the edges are very much perpendicular, vertically cut. So this is the piece that is extended the area. Okay, so far, so the vertical part is pretty much okay. Now for the horizontal part, which is the shortest. Now I couldn't extend the line because I have a this not so even or matching corner here. So I still need the line. Probably not. I'll just be careful. So again, same thing. Make sure that everything's aligned and my blade is perpendicular to the surface. And I'm just going to position it properly. Lay things flat properly. And yep, seems everything is in position. I'm touching the edge. I'm going through the line. Move it forward a bit. Reposition the blade. Okay. And cut it clean. Okay, there's a slight curve over here. And this, but otherwise, no, that's not so noticeable. But I'll just grind that later on. So this one has an excess here. So maybe I could cut a bit more. Okay, again, being careful. Just cut it. Some area later on, I'll straighten that properly. And then I need a 45-degree cut over here. So in order for me to do that properly, I'm going to use the divider again. I'm going to indicate those points. Right? Create some sort of a straight line. Okay, that looks good. Now for that corner. Okay, so this corner needs to be also very perpendicular. So there we go. So making sure that everything is aligned. Touching the edge, and I'm going to roll it perpendicular. Yes. Okay, that's so perfect. Being careful not to overdo it or overcut it. Pretty much fine. So here, I'll do the same thing for this corner. So I need it at an angle. So making sure that's 45 degrees. And then just cut. Rolling cut. Pretty much that's a happy corner. That's a happy corner. So safety first, put the head knife away before proceeding to the next stage. Because this is what I do. So all the sharp objects need to be the opposite of me or covered. So these excess, I can't use them anymore, so I throw them away. Trash bin. Now for this one. So it's not entirely perfect on this side, lower side, but you can correct that with, okay, so this is my drill set. So I put in a roll of sandpaper here. Tip. I'm going to sand the excess part. Slowly but surely. Okay, seems okay. For this one, since this is a clean cut, and then there's a bit of an excess here on this part. So let's just sand it a bit. Okay. So everything looks good now. Perfect. Line. And that ends the cutting. Now we need to bevel the edges one last time. I need something raised here to raise this up. So I need this here so that everything is pretty much okay. This is a number 4. It's second to the last, the thinnest beveler I have. It's good. Just feeling everything. They're okay. Fine. So now for some burnishing, I need to seal these edges. Have some burnishing. Now I am intending not to color uh, this flesh cut here. I don't think I'm going to paint that with matte white acrylic. I'm just gonna let it be. As I start painting, I might paint the black side, so that's not what I want. So this is just good. Besides, this underside is not really seen. Not so much noticeable here, either on this side, the vertical one. So I'm just gonna put nice amount of burnishing liquid, which is Tokinol by Siwa from Japan. Just to seal it. Good amount. Just enough. Not too little, not too much at the same time. Then I need to slick this piece of cloth. Okay, a bit shiny. Yep, that's enough. So now let's see the finished product. Finished product first. I just cut the edge and just burnish these last edges. But overall, this is what I intended it to be. This is actually the original version when I first had the strap. So I'm designating this as S, the EDC Tool Organizer S. S stands for standard, simple, also for Swiss knives. Okay, so I've intended to redesign this, redesignate this for my Swiss knives. And it has this main strap here so that it's covered, protected, and not seen. Okay, so we do have a strict knife law, even though it's 1978 or 1979. So I cannot carry a knife or something with a blade without good reason. That's not connected to your profession, for example. So sharp objects are also included in that law, and that it even, like screwdrivers, for example. If a carpenter is carrying screwdrivers and he has good reason to carry it due to his uh, field of expertise or his job. So in my case, I don't really carry Swiss knives often. No, meaning not at all. Carry something that is that like this TPT slide normally, where I am sharpening pencils because I'm an architect and I also teach architecture to my students, and I would demonstrate how to cut or sharpen a pencil with a blade. So around the house, I I also clip my tools around when I'm fixing stuff. So it's around my waistline. So that's one tool. And sometimes I carry this. This one has a nail clipper. So it's the nail clipper 58 millimeter ones. I could actually place it here. Normally, I place my key organizer here. But for this demonstration, I'll use that. I could now I can also place in this, but let's use that as an example. So we have this and then a flashlight. So there are flashlight versions of course of Victorinox. They're rare now, but they're kind of weak, and I need something that really floods the walkway when I'm walking at night. So this one, I'll place it here, clips onto there, right? And then I have a strap, like so. Then I can clip this onto my belt, to my shorts, or onto my pocket. So this is important for me now. I discovered that Ulticlip is quite convenient for me, for my tools. So this is what it looks like. Right? It's the finished product. The white and the black, and then some gray is the theme. Not exactly Stormtrooper. Yeah. So this is the Apex EDC Tool Organizer S. S stands for simple, standard, or Swiss knife. So that was the intention. Now, comparing it to my previous one, which is an open without the straps, this is what it looks like. Okay, so it's exactly the same layout, slightly different in dimension. It's a bit taller, the white area, the white part. Basically the same. So without the strap. This one I'm carrying, I placed in my Roxen Flex companion. This is something I'm normally carrying because it has no knives or blades. So I'm placing it. So, and that's my key organizer. And I usually have something like this nice flashlight. This is the Warrior Nano. Okay. Let's read this. So this one is going to be on my hip for the next couple of weeks to test it out. But if you want to make your own, I have the pattern. Oh, just check out the link or how to get it and the pricing. But yeah, this is the Apex EDC Tool Organizer S. Simple, standard Swiss Army knife. And I got also the pen. Okay, so this is the Pico pen. So that's a bit tight